Hi everyone, welcome back to Too Cool for Middle School. I'm taking a little break right now while my 1-month-old baby is asleep, and I'm just ignoring all of the dishes and everything that need to get done that I usually do while she naps. I just wanted to do something that felt like the old me. So we're gonna do a little book video today, and this year I wanted to kind of switch up how I do book videos because I'm probably not gonna be reading as much as I have in the past. And so I wanted to do a little bit more like themed videos rather than just like these are book reviews of the books that I read during a certain month. We'll kind of mix them together a little bit, but for today's video, I wanted to talk about 3 books that I've read recently that were also adapted into TV series. We have 3 examples to talk about, and I'm just gonna show you real quickly the books that I read in February. So this was the first one. It's called I Must Betray You by Ruta Sepetys, and it's so good. It's about the revolution in Romania in the 1980s, and I love it so much. I definitely want to like dedicate a video to this book. As soon as I was finished, I actually bought all of her other books. She writes really good historical fiction. So what I think I'll do is just try to read all of her other books and then make a video reviewing all of her books. Really good for the classroom. So I'm gonna hold off on like fully reviewing this one until we can do that video. I also read The Tea Dragon Society by Katie O'Neill. I had read another one of her graphic novels a couple months ago and absolutely loved it. So I just wanted to get more by her. And I have quite a few actually graphic novels around right now. So maybe I will also save a review for this one when we can do a book like all about some cool graphic novels for the classroom slash I have like 1 or 2 that I think are more for adults. So, and then the other 2 books that I read were Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel and My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. And both of these have been adapted into TV series. And then I think in January I read Anxious People by Frederick Bachman. So today we are going to talk about all 3 of these. Let's start with Anxious People just because I read this one first. I had seen it on Instagram a lot, but I didn't really understand what it was about. And at first it didn't seem like something that I would really enjoy. I was wrong, but that was my initial impression. But I had seen the title enough, so then I was just like scrolling through Netflix one day and I saw the TV series, and so I was like, oh, okay, well let me just check out the TV series and kind of like see what this is about. So it's on Netflix, it's in Swedish, which is actually kind of fun. I like it's just a very different style from like most TV shows in America. So the first episode is hilarious. They just like the physical comedy. Like he gets a haircut or like half a haircut, one of the main characters in the very beginning, and it's just hilarious. So at first I was just drawn into like the comedy of the story, and it's a really like preposterous premise. So a crime has been committed, kind of like somebody, we don't know who, tried to rob a bank, but it turns out that it was a cashless bank. And so then they tried to escape and they ran into this apartment that was being shown as like an open house, and just kind of by default like took everybody hostage in this apartment showing. So eventually everybody is released from the apartment except for whoever was, you know, the bank robber hostage taker. They can't find that person. So throughout the book and throughout the TV show, they are interviewing all of the people who were in that showing and trying to, you know, gather enough evidence to figure out what happened. So the premise is a little bit weird. It is really funny, but it also has like a really deep meaning. And so many people since I've read this one have recommended so many others of Frederick Bachman's books. And I like his style, so I definitely want to read more of his work because it is really funny, but then there's also a really strong theme behind all of the preposterousness that happens. So the book is able to really get into like the outside lives of all of the characters. They all act in a really strange way. Like they all just kind of seem nuts when they're being interviewed. And then you kind of figure out why as you continue to read more. So there's like an overarching reason why all of them are acting a little bit weird. But then they all have just like things going on in their lives that also cause them to behave strangely, sometimes meanly. And so, you know, like the ultimate theme of the book is that people have so much more going on behind their behavior. Like there's so much that everybody around you is dealing with, and the things that they do, you know, might have a reason behind them. So maybe we can suspend our judgment a little bit of them until we know more about what's going on in their life. So the book does a really, really good job of exploring all of the characters. And then in the TV series, they change the characters a little bit, but I kind of like that. Like they just make each person a little bit more distinct. And there are a few characters that they can't cover, like, you know, they just don't have time. But I want to say it's like 7 episodes, maybe 10 episodes, something like that. So they do have a pretty long time to get into the backstories of each of the characters. And they go into a little bit more detail with the police officers who are father and son. So they are really funny in the show. The acting is great. Again, since it has subtitles, if you don't speak Swedish, then you're gonna have to read along. But I felt like it was one of the easier shows with subtitles that I've tried to follow before. Like, I don't know, maybe because I didn't have the baby with me at the time when I was watching it or something, but I felt like it was just really easy to follow. It's a pretty, again, like physical show, so you're able to kind of see what's going on even as you read the subtitles. So all of their like physical acting really supports what they're doing. So I definitely recommend the book, definitely recommend the TV series. I like watched a few episodes of the series, then read the whole book. I was able to read it pretty fast because it's just so good. It's really compelling. I wanted to know what happens and I wanted to get back to the show. And then I watched the rest of the episodes and I was able to kind of compare. So they're not exactly the same, but they both like took the elements of the story that fit best like within a book and within a TV show and did a really great job with those things. I really love the apartment that they spend a lot of time in. It was cool to just like see this really cozy place. Like that's where most of the action takes place. So definitely recommend both of them. It's a light, funny story, but it also has like deeper meaning behind it. So then I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, which people have been recommending for like quite a few years. I think it was written in like 2014. Yep, 2014. And it was a bestseller then. I hadn't heard about it in 2014, I don't think. But then it kind of had like a resurgence in the past couple of years because it is about a global pandemic. So many people had recommended it that I wanted to pick it up, but also I was like, I am living through a global pandemic. I don't really want to read about it. And I also don't really like survival stories. So I was like, I don't know if I'm really gonna love it as much as everybody else did. But on HBO, they did a series and that was also very like highly acclaimed. So I was like, all right, let me read the book and then I can watch the series. So I started reading the book. It took me a little while to get into it. I kind of started it like a few times before I like actually started reading it consistently. But it really isn't a survival novel. So I was glad for that. So it's not like there was this global pandemic and then there's a few people that survive. In this story, it's like 1% of the population. And then they, you know, like rebuild and it like goes through all the details of like how they survived. It's not that. In fact, one of the themes, they pull from a Star Trek episode because there are some people who are alive who like remember life before the pandemic. And the line from Star Trek is, survival is insufficient. So there are a lot of people in this story who don't want to just survive. They also want to, you know, like retain some of the best things from the world before. So there's a traveling symphony and they are musicians, and then there are actors who perform Shakespeare. So they want to like preserve that art and culture from the before times. And so they don't really settle down. They don't really, start a community. They just travel around, and this is all set in like Canada. I think sometimes they like dip below the border into the United States, but all of those things are gone anyway. And then it also jumps back in time quite a bit, and a lot of it is set in Toronto. So it's like a very Canadian book. And then in the TV series, the HBO series, they switch it to like Chicago, and just like every place is different and they make it more American. I don't really know why. I don't know why that was necessary, but anyway. So the couple of other storylines that are all kind of like intertwined and they jump back and forth a lot. There's an actor who had like a fairly successful career. So like they go back to his like early career, and then at one point in the story, he's kind of like an older actor. He wants to be taken seriously, so he does some Shakespeare. And the night of his opening performance is kind of like when the world changes and some people's lives intersect. So the book is very beautifully written, and is it tough to follow? I would say like at the beginning, it's a little bit difficult to follow all of the characters and like how they're connected and like when they came into the story, because it does jump back and forth quite a bit. But once you get into it, then you can totally follow. So the book itself is really, really well done, and I like, well, it's still a bit triggering to read about all of these people who died of a virus, and then like just the luck involved in surviving a virus, and then like the pressure to retain the good things from the culture before. It's still a little bit difficult to read, but it is such a beautiful book. I definitely recommend it if you can like handle it emotionally. And then the series is really well done as well. So I think one good thing about series versus movies is that they are so long, right? So I think this one is 10 episodes, because a lot of times with a movie, they leave out so much of what was in the book because they only have like 2 hours or whatever. So this gives you like, I don't know, 10 hours. I think they were hour-long episodes. So they were able to get into a lot of what's in the book. However, in the series, they change all of the little details. So like I was saying, like all the places are something different. The way that everybody meets is all something different. Also, all of the biggest details are pretty much different. Like there's kind of an antagonist who in the book and in the movie is just, he's the same person, but he has like a completely different context and just like operates completely differently. The way that characters like come together and get separated is completely different. So it's like all of the really big details are different, all of the really small details are different, but the medium details are the same. And I was fine with that because, I just read the book, and so in watching the movie, I kind of wanted to see like a different spin on it, a different take on it. And I could see how people would say that like they couldn't get into it maybe, or like it was a little bit hard to keep their attention sometimes because 99% of the population is supposed to be gone. So sometimes there are like very quiet parts of the show, and it gets a little bit slow at times, but I think that like fits the mood and the tone of the show. I have to say the finale, the final episode is absolutely my favorite. It is beautiful. They put on a production of King Lear, I think. And if you teach Shakespeare in your classes, like if you're a high school teacher, oh my gosh, you should absolutely use like that scene from the TV show. It's so, so good. And like the costuming throughout the show is amazing because nobody would be making new things. Like nobody has time to like make new clothes, like plant cotton and harvest it and like make new fabric and then like cut new clothes. Like no one is doing that. So they are just like repurposing everything that already exists. And they really do a good job of like showing that in the costuming. So I thought that was brilliant. And so many of the characters in the book and in the show are like creatives, they're like, that's kind of their identity. So it's very cool to see the way that people continue to like express themselves even when there aren't very many people to express yourself to and stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's just beautifully done. It's hard to read and hard to watch just because it feels like it's not science fiction, you know. We're like, oh, I could see our world turning into this world more easily than I had ever thought before. And it doesn't actually give you that much hope. Like it's still a very difficult world to live in, and there are like cults that kind of come up out of this, because I think you would start to think if you were, you know, 1% of the population that survived, you're special. There's a reason why you lived and other people didn't. So I could see that being like fertile ground for cults and stuff like that. So it's just really, really interesting the way that Emily St. John Mandel handles the topic of a pandemic, and then the way that they turned it into the TV series. So if you've read any of these books or seen any of these series, let me know what you think about them, because I think these are just so fun to talk about. So let me know. Also, Miranda in the TV series does such a good job. She's so good. And each episode kind of like jumps to a different character and their situation at the time. And I always got excited when it was like a Miranda episode. And the third one for today is My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante. Okay, so it all started because I watched a movie on Netflix called The Lost Daughter, which is based on another of the books in this series. I think there's 4 books. The Days of Abandonment, Troubling Love, The Lost Daughter. I think those are the other 3 in this series, and My Brilliant Friend is the first one, I'm pretty sure. So the movie was kind of weird. Like I could tell that there was something really like brilliant about it, but it's like you couldn't get all the details. I was like, there's gotta be more to this. So there was a review that I saw on Instagram from Bitch Magazine, if you want to go find it, and it was such a well-written review, and it explained how like the movie was taken out of this like Neapolitan context. So these books are like firmly set in Naples, in Italy, in like the 1950s. That's when this one begins. So I guess they move forward in time from there, and then The Lost Daughter is closer to like our time. It couldn't be like today. I don't know. They might have changed the timing a little bit as well. And then like Elena is like British, and she just studies like Italian language, and then she like moves to America. Like, so that kind of ruins everything. Like that doesn't make sense for these books, because like Naples and Italy and Italian culture is like 50% of the book. Like the characters are only the other 50%. Like the world that they live in just impacts everything. So then I was watching another show that I talked about, I think in my last video on BBC Select, called Right Around the World. And they specifically go to the places where books are set and just like explore the settings, because that's such a huge deal for so many books, right? So they were talking about this book, and they were in Naples, and they were like eating the food and going to the ocean and looking at the neighborhoods. And this takes place in like a slum of Naples. So it isn't like this, you know, like romantic portrayal of Naples. It's like what were things like for Italians like post World War II who don't have much money and don't have really a way to make any more money. Education is not guaranteed. So that's one of the big like plot conflicts in the book. There's these 2 girls, and they're both very smart. They're friends and they're brilliant. Leela is actually more brilliant, but her family doesn't support her continuing to get an education. And then Elena, her parents don't really support her getting an education either, but she just kind of like keeps getting lucky and keeps getting to pursue her education. She goes to middle school and then goes to high school, and those things are not guaranteed. But the reason that she does well is because she like studies with Leela, who just goes to the library and reads and like learns all of this stuff on her own. But one friend has an education, one friend doesn't, and that changes the trajectory of their lives. And the book is just so well written. It's so beautifully done, and it's translated from Italian, and it really dives deep into just like the toxic patriarchy of the Italian culture in these neighborhoods, and how the men just control so much and women had so few choices, and the men had very few choices at this time as well. So the only people who are doing well are like operating in the black market and, you know, getting into the mafia and stuff like that. And the women are so often just like casualties of the men's whims. There's a lot of domestic violence. There's a lot of just violence between people. If anyone is like disrespected or like, you know, like hits on somebody's sister or something like that. So there's a lot of like family pride and possessiveness and stuff like that. So it's a very different world, like, you know, that I had really never read about, but you just get so deeply ingrained into that world through this book. It's just so good. It's a very like haunting book. And then the Maggie Gyllenhaal movie is very haunting as well. So I could tell like it's based on something really good, but I didn't think that movie was very good. However, there's also an HBO series called My Brilliant Friend that is really good, and it stays pretty true to the book. Nope, the baby's crying. I'm gonna have to wrap it up here. But it stays truer to the book than either of the other two. It almost follows it like exactly, and it's in Italian, so there's also the subtitles. It's a little bit harder for me to get through it now that my baby is here, because I'm trying to like watch it and read along while I'm like taking care of her. So it's taking me longer to get through that one. But the little girls, the actors are very good. The setting is really good. And I'm about halfway through that series, so I haven't finished it yet. I did see that they renewed it for a season 2, so that probably covers the next book, which I think is The Days of Abandonment. So, you know, next time the baby takes a nap, I've got to watch a little bit more of this series, but it's so good. It's just not like romanticized in any way. It's like very real. The actors look like real people. They do a great job. And so I highly recommend the book and the series. So for all three of these, you know, they have kind of like different purposes and different themes and tones and topics, but they're all really good. So if you've read any of these or seen any of those series, I would love to hear from you in the comments. And then next month we'll do another kind of like themed video like this. So let me know if you have any ideas for other themes. I'm kind of like letting the books guide me to what we do, but yeah. Okay, I gotta go take care of that baby. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.